Hey guys, welcome back to Saving Green, your stop for sustainability on a budget. Today we have an episode of the Saving Green Wire, some quick news updates with relevant environmental news that will help you save money and the planet. So let's check it out. Alright guys, this week was a big one for environmental news, of course because of Tesla's Battery Day on September 22nd. On the Fremont, California stage, Elon Musk and company announced some really impressive technological innovations that are not coming tomorrow, or the next day, or the next year, but in fact over the next several years of both incremental and paradigm-shifting improvements in fuel efficiency, lithium-ion battery technology, improved streamlining of manufacturing, distribution cycles, and cheaper cars. If you really want to get into the weeds, I will link down to the full video as well as some good summaries, some of which I found quite helpful. However, there are just a few key things that it's important to note.
The three parts of a sustainable energy future are sustainable energy generation, storage, and electric vehicles.
So the first goal is to produce a terawatt-hour scale battery production. Of course, that is an impressive goal and several orders of magnitude higher than anything that is currently available, including from Tesla or any other battery manufacturer. And in fact, they say so as much that they may need as many as 135 new gigafactories to produce their vision of greener energy production and storage. And obviously they're a long way away from that, considering their gigafactory number 1 still isn't complete in Nevada. They also want to produce a cheaper electric vehicle and ultimately replacing up to 1% of the global fleet with electrical powertrains. Now, this will be achieved through several things that we'll discuss in just a moment, but namely streamlining the manufacturing process, the harvesting and recycling of materials and their life cycle breakdown, as well as distribution improvements in the cars themselves. And the third goal is to reduce the cost per kilowatt hour by up to 50%. Cost can be valued in dollars as well as environmental footprint, and Tesla didn't go into great details as to what the carbon footprint actually is of a lot of these changes, but one can assume that if they're reducing energy, material cost, labor, and square footage as they suggest, then certainly their carbon footprint will improve dramatically. So how is this going to be done? Well, there are 5 basic tenets of Tesla's Battery Day, and I'll summarize them quickly. The first is improvements in cell design of the battery itself. And this is the famed tabless architecture that allows for a shorter distance for the electrons to travel within the battery structure itself, as opposed to the tab or jelly roll current design that greatly increases the thermal efficiency of these batteries. This means they can get larger batteries that produce more power, more energy storage, and ultimately are much faster to produce. By changing the architecture of the battery itself, they estimate about a 14% cost reduction per kilowatt hour. That's step 1. Step 2 is the cell factory itself, and improvements in the quote-unquote dry coating of the electrolyte material that, through the purchase of Maxwell Technologies a few years back, is still a ways away, but will dramatically, by up to 75%, cut down the square footage, raw materials, wastewater, and other elements needed to lay the electrolyte into the cell design and ultimately streamline the process with a dry coating. They also will increase factory throughput by several orders of magnitude. In fact, they say a 7 times improvement in efficiency. So they're basically saying that for each current factory, they're going to produce 7 times as many batteries as they currently can. Now, with both of these improvements, Tesla anticipates an 18% cost per kilowatt hour reduction. That's step 2. The next is a shift towards anode materials. Now, within the cell structure itself, you have the cathode and anode, and in a previous video I talked a little bit about the technology and architecture of a traditional lithium-ion battery. But what they're basically doing is they're shifting from graphite to silicone. So this shift from graphite to silicone will be hugely beneficial, and they anticipate a 5% reduction in cost per kilowatt hour. That's step 3. Now, cathodes are analogous to bookshelves, where the lithium ions are the books, and the metal structures are required to maintain the stability of these compounds and ions so that they don't explode. So currently, iron is used most commonly for its thermal stability, followed by iron phosphate, manganese, and nickel. Now, nickel is really abundant, it's really cheap, and it's really energy dense, but not very stable. So Tesla is advocating new metal science advancements both in how they use the nickel and how they will implement it, to create basically 3 different tiers of battery classes. The first being predominantly iron for battery storage and low power demand cycles. The second being your manganese nickel hybrid cathode technologies, which will be used for middle of the road, like your typical battery cell vehicle, consumer vehicle. And then your third would have a higher nickel content that would be used for your Cybertrucks and for your semis and things of that nature. And they hope that with the combination of more efficiencies in how they collect these metals and how they implement them, they're anticipating a huge reduction in their total cost per kilowatt hour by up to 12%, as well as a 66% reduction in their cost and investment in the development of cathodes. And they are building cathode factories specifically throughout the US. They're also purchasing lithium salt mines, which are really just flats essentially, where they can use sodium chloride or table salt to distill the lithium safely from the environment without much of a carbon impact. Plus, by bringing all this domestically, they're able to reduce the transportation time and improve efficiencies there as well. And the last component would be vehicle design itself. And what they aim to do is greatly increase the battery cell density by integrating new metal alloys into their engineering of the battery casing and structural support to both provide vehicle stability, increase the center of mass, and move battery cells more centrally to create basically more of a cushion, so to speak, for side impact collisions. And this is pretty exciting because this will allow them to do a whole lot more with less, and it will allow them to hopefully kind of save on material costs. And they anticipate about a 10% reduction in overall mass of the vehicles, which is hugely important if you're looking at power delivery on the drivetrain. And this will account for about a 7% cost per kilowatt hour reduction. So that was step 5. So what does this mean if they can achieve all of these 5 goals? Well, overall, that means a 54% increase in the range offered in their commercial vehicles. It means a 56% reduction in the cost per kilowatt hour and a 69% reduction in overall investment costs, which I think would be analogous to the carbon footprint or the materials used. So really a big deal. Now, I think that the reason why Wall Street and a lot of skeptics were concerned and disappointed by Battery Day is because, no, they didn't promise a 1,000,000-mile battery. No, they did not develop the dry coating technology and push it to market yet. They are still in many iterative phases to improve these technologies. And lastly, the promise of a $25,000 vehicle just is not there yet. But it's potentially coming. And now we see how they're approaching this process and how this may ultimately play out. So keep an eye on Tesla over the next couple months, see how things proceed, and if they are following through with these promises. Because if they will, it'll be quite exciting and will ultimately produce a cheaper, more efficient vehicle for all of us. Now, in other Tesla news, they are unlocking a $2,000 upgrade path for the Model Y owners that will improve the efficiency and basically driving performance of the vehicle by improving their 0 to 60 speed to 4.3 seconds from 4.8. So that could be kind of cool. Again, it just kind of shows how Tesla is constantly, with over-the-air updates, really optimizing their vehicle fleets. Now, outside of Tesla news, there's still a lot going on. To follow up on a video from a few months back, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, actually rejected the NERA's lawsuit, contending that net metering energy produced from solar panels would not be federally regulated, which would mean wholesale pricing for consumers, which would mean greatly less reimbursement and less dollars per kilowatt hour for solar, and actually kept it on the retail side or state-directed initiatives. This is good news for solar. And in other news, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, just basically pronounced along similar lines with other states like Washington and Hawaii that they will ban internal combustion engines for new vehicle sales after 2035. Now, some critics have said, well, that's great, but why not now? And that's a great question. But nonetheless, certainly the infrastructure is not quite there for a fully electric or hydrogen cell fleet, even though California does have a huge economy, the 5th largest in the world, and perhaps one of the largest hydrogen infrastructures as well. So if anyone could do it, they probably could, but they're not quite there yet. But this is no doubt in response to the devastating fires that they've experienced experienced in the Pacific Northwest, as well as California at large over the last several years. And hopefully this is fuel to the fire, so to speak, to move the transition to greener pastures and greener sources of energy and transportation ultimately as well. So thanks again for checking out the Savoring Green Wire, your recap for environmental news that is relevant to you. If you have any questions or comments about Battery Day or otherwise, please leave them down below. Of course, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, I'll see you then. Good luck saving green. Thanks.